After being in early access since January of last year, Tokyo Xtreme Racer has had its full release on September 24th, 2025. Now, I already made a video of my initial thoughts of the game back in April, but I'm happy to report that they've only gotten better since the version 1.0 release. Now, I actually ended up starting an entirely new game to experience 1.0 fresh, but I kinda did somewhat regret that, as the game up to Midnight Cinderella is pretty much the same, with the rivals all using the same exact cars. But it did allow me to experience a new starter car and choose a different car branching path afterwards. Before we dive in, I wanted to give a quick refresher on the Tokyo Xtreme Racer series for those who are new. Tokyo Xtreme Racer, or Shotoko Battle, started in the mid-90s, with the highway battle games we know today specifically starting in 1999 on the Sega Dreamcast. After those first two full games, Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2 was brought over to the PlayStation 2 as Tokyo Xtreme Racer 0, with a new game in Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 following shortly after. Genki also developed a few Tokyo Xtreme Racer drift games on the PS2, which are actually more of a toge racer than it is full-on drifting. But their last major release was called Import Tuner Challenge, due to Crave Entertainment holding the rights in the US to the Tokyo Xtreme Racer name. That naming change, coupled with Xbox exclusivity, ensured weak sales and the series going dormant for years. But after almost 20 years, in 2024, Genki came out of nowhere to announce a brand new entry, which released to early access in January of 2025. And that's where the story ended so far, but since then, it's gone through quite a bit of change to really flesh out what we got to experience in early access. Version 1.0 of the game essentially unlocks the remainder of the game. Where we left off in early access after beating Midnight Cinderella, I believe Genki said was about the 30 or 40% mark. And boy, they weren't kidding. The bosses afterwards, and there's even more racers and so many more wanderers. There's quite a few to get through. But there's also a lot of changes to the core gameplay as well. One of the first major changes was actually with the perk system itself. Now, I'm gonna be honest, when I restarted my game, I audibly groaned with how big the perk tree had gotten. If you remember, I was hoping it would play a much smaller role in the game, but they actually overhauled quite a bit of them. So some perks like Long Haul that you used to have to pay extra for, that's just incorporated into the gameplay. So if you're racing back to back and driving quite a bit, you'll earn those extra credits without wasting BP to unlock that as a skill. The attack and defense trees also have some really powerful perks that you can enable before you leave the garage, which really helped out my playthrough early on, where those faster cars and the higher performance parts are unavailable, but we'll get to it later in the video. I found that it made the late game a little too easy. Now, one change Genki did make that I was happy to see were engine swaps. They are now back in the game, but they unfortunately cost about 3,000 BP to unlock, so that means most people will either rarely get to use them, or you'll have to go through New Game Plus, which I found was one of the first perks I unlocked since we get all the BP refunded anyway. Another new thing, speaking of, is New Game Plus. So you essentially, once you complete the final boss battles of the main story, you can choose to either keep going to 100% the game, or begin New Game Plus. So you get to keep all of your cars, their upgrades, your money, and you're also refunded every single battle point. So this is nice. Like I said, I went right to open up the engine swap so I could have that ability earlier on in the game. And I got to choose new skill trees. So this time around, I'm actually not going to be using some of the more broken ones that made the early game super quick and made the late game quite easy. There are also some new perks as well, so you can teleport between parking areas. You can summon the legendary tuner on you, which feels like I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh! When I just summon him no matter where I am. But it really helps cut down on the grind and repetitiveness of just driving all over. What I like to do when I start a new chapter now is I'll start with the parking area, so that way I know I'm not leaving anybody behind, and then I'll hit the road again. To complement the perk system, your rewards have been drastically improved too. The BP specifically was one that I struggled a lot with in early access, so they made some really great improvements. So you earn so much more BP for beating rivals for the first time, but they've also greatly increased the yield of BP earned after they're defeated. So random drivers, I don't believe yield any, but if you're replaying regular drivers, I believe you earn 1, and then it kind of scales up from there. If you're battling team bosses, you'll earn extra, and if you're battling like big stage bosses like Bloodhound or Snake Eyes, you're going to earn a lot more. Not as much as when you first beat them, but you're still going to earn so much more. So if you want to grind, you can, stack up some points pretty early on. Like I mentioned before, long run is now just a part of your gameplay, so you earn cash really quickly, a lot easier than early access. I found I didn't even need to unlock any extra money earning perks because I felt like the money I was earning was enough to just reinvest into the car. So before I even improved the wallet size, I actually ended up just spending the money, which was great. The one time I felt like I needed to improve the wallet size was when I was actively saving to purchase a new car, or especially when I was starting to save BP for a new car. That's really where you start to feel the restrictions more, and I'm still not a big fan of how they limit how big your wallet and especially how big your battle points are. So you have to strategize that a little bit more. Outside of cars and perks, I think the biggest thing that everyone has been so excited for is the car list. Leading up to the full release of the game, Yankee teased us with so many cars to fill out the roster, with more cars to existing brands that are in the game, like with Nissan's. There's more GTRs, a lot of the new options. We have some more Z models like the 350 and the new, is it the 400? I think it's 400. I forget exactly what it is. I'm driving it, but I forget what it's called. But we've also have some returning brands like Lexus and Honda. Tokyo Xtreme Racer hasn't had Honda for a very, very long time. So it was really great to see all the NSXs return, Civics. I think the Integra's in. I'm going to have to take a look at my footage, but it's great to have them all back. My one critique of the car roster isn't actually anything to do with the cars on the list. I really do like all the choices they've made, and I would like more, but I think it's okay for now. No, my big critique is we still only have 3 starter cars, which to me doesn't feel right in a Tokyo Xtreme Racer game. Usually we have a lot more options, whether we can afford them or not. We have a lot of options available to look at, but there's also so many more options available. If you watched my Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 video, you'll see how many cars were unlocked from the start. There were 2 different types of Miatas. We had the 180SX, we had Silvias. We even had big cars like the Chaser, which did break progression a little bit in that game. You could get a Chaser and kind of, run that for forever. I remember even seeing the old YouTube videos where take the disc out and then you can rack up the mileage to then engine swap it, but I digress. I really would have liked to see more cars unlocked, especially some of the K cars. I think it would have been nice to have more of the small K cars unlocked from the beginning, especially because you see wanderers like Wind of Napoli so early, and he specifically requires a Suzuki Alto. So if they ever push an update, I know the game will be coming to PS5 in February, so maybe there's one more big update before they release it. But I would really like to see some more cars to choose from. That was the only thing I was kind of upset about, is that they didn't change anything else there. I finally ended up beating the game too, which is why it's taken so long for this video to come out. So I do want to talk about some of the end game, but I don't want to dive too deep into the story. I might do that for another video. Tokyo Xtreme Racer lore is very big and very wide, so we'll see. But what I will say is, the game has you explore 3 different storylines. Rebirth of a Legend, Return of the Bastards, and Rise of a New Generation. And I really like this approach to it because the first 2 have you battling a lot of returning characters from the previous games, and you find out a lot of their own motives for leaving the racing scene, wanting to come back. It helps tie up some loose ends. If I remember correctly, in the lore of this game, it takes place about 4 years after Import Tuner Challenge, so some of the characters that are named are actually newer versions of ones we've seen from older games. But it's really nice for long-time fans. We get to tie up some loose story ends, and we have some reoccurring characters. On the other hand, that latter, the Rise of the New Generation storyline, I really do adore because it's symbolic, really, welcoming a lot of new fans into the franchise, especially with Eternal Polaris. Like you kind of see yourself in that character a little bit, where you're trying to find out, if you're new to the franchise, like, why am I racing? What's the point? And by the end of it, we see really strong foundations for an entire new team and a whole new class of racers that I hope we see more of, whether it's in future updates or in future games. But like I mentioned in the perk section, I found that the specific perks I had enabled, the final bosses of Jintei and Snake Eyes and Eternal Polaris and even the Machine King at the end, it made it a little too easy. I was shocked with just how quickly I could get down their bar. I only had my new Z, so it was fully tuned, but it still felt like I was a little too fast. So I think the second time you race them, they're a little bit quicker, but what I'm going to be doing in my New Game Plus playthrough is I'm just not going to use most of these perks because I already used them once. Especially when I get towards the end game, I think it'll be much more enjoyable and give me that older Tokyo Xtreme Racer feel. Speaking of the old Tokyo Xtreme Racer feel, I think that's the one thing missing from the newest Tokyo Xtreme Racer. We get some of the songs remixed a lot, which is cool, but I would really like to see an option to select music from certain songs. I don't know how that would work, who owns the rights to it. I would hope Genki does. But I think that'd be really cool. If you guys have ever played Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, you're able to change the music to some of the older games in it. So I'd really love to see something like that in Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3, where you could maybe change the menu sounds to be like Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3, or have songs from Zero, or anything like that, where it makes it feel a little bit like the older games. But overall, I've just been having a blast playing this game. Even though it was a little bit of a grind to get back to where I was before I restarted, it was worth it. I got to try so many different cars. I started with the Suzuki, went to the Chaser, then I went into the NSX, which was, oh my god, so much grip. It was awesome. And then I finished up with the Z. And now in New Game Plus, messing around with the FD-RX-7. So it'll be a lot of fun. I think that's the nice thing with New Game Plus and reallocating all my points is I've put it all back into most customization parts being unlocked, but also so it's really cheap to buy some new cars, which is fun because that's what I like to do. I like to mess around and play with new cars. So overall, I really think Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2025 is certainly worth the hype, at least for me. As someone who recently really got into the franchise with replaying Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 for the first time, this game has got me hooked. As a little mini celebration to myself for hitting 1,000 subscribers, I ended up picking up Import Tuner Challenge to hopefully do for a video one day, but also to play for myself, of course. And if you guys haven't experienced this franchise at all, I think this is a really, really great jumping in point. I think I talked about it in the last video, but with the way the cars handle, the way a lot of the AI handles, and with how performance scales in this game, I think it's really accessible, which is always, for me as a someone as a newcomer into the franchise, it's always the hardest part. I think it's kind of like a Dark Souls game where the difficulty is part of the game. I think that's very much true here. But what I like with this game specifically is, out of all the other Tokyo Xtreme Racers, it really ramps up, which I kind of talking out of both sides of my own mouth, because like I mentioned, some of the perks really crush that progression, but I find with a lot of those things turned off, the racing is really, really close. But like I said, it's also very accessible. So if you've always been worried about jumping into this franchise because it's like kind of hard to understand, the mechanics are very unique, the gameplay and the racers can get really hard, this is a really great place for you to jump into. It is a PlayStation 2 era game in the best way possible. The game is complete. It runs, for being on Unreal Engine 5 on a PC, it runs incredibly well. I built a new computer in the spring, but even on my old PC, it ran with no problems. You get to unlock and grind for everything yourself just by playing it. There is no online, which I know some people aren't too happy about, but I'm fine with that. I don't expect online from a company like Genki, who's made very strong single-player games. What I want is what I got. A really great single-player game with a lot of funny characters, a lot of great storylines, and some awesome cars to play around and customize with. So if you haven't played it already, definitely pick it up on Steam. It's at its full release now, and then in February it will be released for PS5. I've been telling all my friends, all my coworkers who have wanted an older racing game to play when we talk about the old Need for Speeds and Midnight Clubs, I've been letting them know they all have PS5s. Mark your calendar. This game's coming out and you're going to want to play it. But for those of you who have played it, let me know in the comments. How's your playthrough been going? Have you 100%ed it? Who's been your favorite boss? What's been your favorite car? I'm dying to know. But yeah, more car content to come, more video games coming, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay tuned, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.